If you're looking at a lab report or a recommendation for donor eggs right now, everything probably feels upside down. You might be thinking, but I had 10 or 15 or more eggs retrieved during my last cycle. Surely that means the chances are better than 1%. It's so hard to reconcile those two things. When you see a high number of eggs during an ultrasound, it feels like a win. It feels like you've beaten the odds just by getting them. But eventually, after no success and a consider donor eggs recommendation, you might find yourself asking, why would I stop using my own eggs and move to donor eggs? Especially when my numbers look good. To answer that, we have to look at what AMH actually is. Anti-Mullerian hormone is basically a head count. It tells the doctor how many eggs are waiting in the reserve, but it can't tell us if those eggs have the internal energy to actually become a baby. It's a measure of quantity, not quality. When you have a retrieval and get 10, 15, or more eggs, you naturally think, with all these possibilities, one of them has to be the child I'm waiting for. But at 45, those eggs have been with us for over 4 decades. Over time, the DNA inside our eggs can have trouble sorting itself out perfectly during the division process. There is also a biological factor that we don't always talk about, and that is the environment where the egg actually matures. Every egg grows in a tiny sac called a follicle, which is filled with fluid. As we get older, that fluid changes. It can become more acidic and develop higher levels of oxidative stress. I think of it like trying to grow a beautiful garden in rusty water. That rust actually damages the egg's ability to create the energy it needs to divide after fertilization. It's a biological fact that we can't really control. Even if you retrieve 20 eggs, they are all pulling from that same 45-year-old energy source and maturing in that same environment. You have the quantity, but the internal machinery that builds a human being is often just tired. Think of it as oocyte competence. An egg can look perfect under a microscope. It can even fertilize, but it lacks the metabolic engine, the mitochondria, to keep that life going past those first few critical days. It's like a car that looks brand new, but has a battery that simply can't hold a charge anymore. It stalls out before it ever hits the highway. This is why you see the day 3 crash in the lab. The embryos look great on day 1 and day 2, but on day 3, they have to switch over to their own energy. And that is when the engine stalls. It isn't a failure of your willpower. It is a biological limit of the cell itself. You don't know what you don't know. Welcome to Donor Egg Diary. I am a mom on a mission. I'm not a doctor or a clinical expert. I am just someone who went through it. I promised myself that I would share all the information I could so others like you may go into it with your eyes wide open. But while the eggs have this biological clock, there's a piece of good news that often gets lost in the noise. Your uterus is an endurance athlete. It doesn't age at the same rate your eggs do. Your body is still a world-class incubator. The soil is healthy. It just needs a seed that has the energy to grow. When you move to a donor, you aren't just a vessel. You and that child share a biological handshake called epigenetics. Your body provides the blood and oxygen, yes, but your uterine fluid actually sends signals that tell that baby's DNA how to express itself. You are the architect of their development every single second for those 9 months. There is also a very quiet, very difficult part of this journey that we don't always talk about out loud. It's the miscarriage loop. At 45, the risk of loss is incredibly high because of those chromosomal challenges. Every time you see a positive test, your heart leaps. But for many in our shoes, that hope is followed by a devastating crash. These repeated losses aren't just medical events, they are deep emotional wounds. They change how you view pregnancy. They turn what should be a time of joy into a time of constant, breathless anxiety. You start to wonder how many times your heart can break and still have enough left for the child who eventually arrives. This loop isn't just about the physical recovery. It's about the emotional upset that builds up every time an IVF cycle fails or a pregnancy ends. It's a specific kind of trauma that leaves you feeling depleted. When you stay in that loop, you start to lose the version of yourself you wanted to be when you finally became a parent. You have to ask yourself if the search for the egg is starting to take away from the mother or father you're going to be once they are actually in your arms. And then there is the unspoken worry. the one we often keep buried because it feels too hard to say. It's the reality that as we age, the risk of our child facing significant lifelong health challenges increases. We all want our children to have the smoothest path possible through this life. Choosing a donor can sometimes feel like choosing a medical bridge. It's acknowledging that a younger egg might be able to provide a foundation of health that is simply harder for our own cells to offer at this stage. It's about wanting to give them every possible advantage from the very first day. Wait, let's take a second for a reality check. This is a safe space, not a doctor's office. This isn't medical or legal advice. There is zero pressure here. My mission is to give you the insider track as I experienced it. But you are the one that must decide for you. Take this information, do your own research, and then make your own choices boldly. Now back to it. Then there's the guilt. A lot of us feel like we waited too long. But did we? If you're like most of us, you probably spent years just trying naturally. You think back to those early months, the ovulation kits, the apps, the quiet hope every month that this is it. Then there was the first doctor's visit, where they told you to just keep trying for 6 more months. Then came the first round of basic testing. You waited weeks for the appointments, weeks for the results, and then months for the follow-up. Before you know it, a year has passed. Then you try IUI, which takes another 6 months because of cycle timing and lab schedules. Then you finally move to IVF. One retrieval takes months of prep, the actual procedure, and then the recovery. If it doesn't work, you're told to wait 2 or 3 months for your body to reset. That fertility loop eats up years of your life before you even realize it. You were doing the work. You were following the plan. And before you know it, you're here at 45 or older, facing a choice you never thought you'd have to make. I suspect if you look back, you'll see that you weren't waiting. You were just trying to find the answer. You were being diligent. You were being a protector of your future family. But we have to talk about the stolen time. This is the part that hits the hardest when we're honest. While we are chasing that 1% chance, we are often accidentally aging out of the life we actually have right now. We call it secondary infertility of the heart. We focus so much on the child we don't have yet that we stop being present for our partners, our friends, and even our own health. We put our marriages into a foxhole. We stop planning trips because we might have a transfer. We stop investing in our careers because we're exhausted from the appointments. We pull away from friends who have kids because it hurts too much to be around them. How many years of your marriage have been consumed by being a fertility patient instead of being a couple? If you spend 3 more years in this loop, what is the cost to your relationship? Protecting your marriage and your mental health is a vital part of preparing for a child. You want to be home emotionally when that baby arrives. You don't want to be a shell of the person you used to be. Sometimes, moving to a donor is the only way to reclaim your life so you actually have a joyful home to bring a child into. If you are 45 or older, there is also an invisible deadline that no one likes to talk about. Most fertility clinics and donor egg programs have strict upper age limits for embryo transfers, often capping treatment at age 50 or 51. While your uterus hardly ages and can carry a pregnancy well into your 50s with hormone support, the medical community often prefers to complete pregnancies by age 51 or 52 for the safety of both mother and baby. This creates a true time crunch. If you decide to take advantage of a live birth guarantee or a shared risk program, you have to realize these programs are built on multiple attempts. They assume you might need 3, 4, or even 6 transfers to reach that guaranteed baby. If you spend the next 2 years chasing a 1% chance with your own eggs, you might reach age 48 or 49 before you even start the donor process. At that point, you might not have enough biological time left to complete all the transfers included in your guarantee before you hit the clinic's age cutoff. Even if you plan on having only 1 child, this is a real risk. If you spend those final years on a low probability path, you might age out before you even get to use the solution that was waiting for you. We also have to talk about the practical side of this shift, because moving to a donor isn't a small step. It's a massive financial commitment. A donor egg treatment is often much more expensive up front than a standard IVF cycle. Depending on where you go, you could be looking at $30,000 to $75,000, especially if you're thinking about a sibling strategy and want to ensure you have enough embryos for the future. When you think about siblings, the math gets even more serious. If you want more than one child, you aren't just looking for one healthy embryo. You're looking for a batch that can grow with your family over the next few years. That takes time, and it takes a significant financial reservoir. You have to ask yourself the hard question: can I afford another round of IVF with my own eggs and still have the $50,000 to $75,000 ready to go for the donor path? For many of us, that one last try money is actually the down payment on the path that has a 60 to 70% success rate. It's a choice between continuing a low probability search or saving those resources for the path that is much more likely to bring your child home. If today's episode helped, great. Check out my free checklists at donoreggdiary.com or dive into the vault if you want. Now, back to it. It can feel so personal when a doctor suggests a donor. It can feel like they're saying you are the problem. But really, they are looking at the biological facts that none of us can control. They want you to succeed. They want to see you holding a baby. They suggest a pivot because they see a clinical dead end ahead on one path and a wide-open medical bridge on the other. It is a completely personal choice whether you want to keep trying with your own eggs or not. Some people need that one last cycle for their own peace of mind, just to know they tried everything. If you feel that need for closure, that's okay. Everyone's enough point looks different. But as you weigh these facts, remember that you are already mothering. You are mothering by making these hard choices. You are mothering by looking at the finances, the time, and the health of your future child. You are the leader of this journey. I'll see you in the next episode.